thing on the agenda, well, the second thing on the agenda tonight is our presentations, and we have the F1 visa program presentation. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am actually going to be presenting for a team that I will introduce you to momentarily. I wanted to start just by giving a little historical information. Last year, there was some discussion within the district about F1 visa programs and if there were any opportunities to bring that to Lake George. And before we explore that a little bit, I wanted to just talk about what F1 is. So when we're talking about F1, we're talking about a visa that would allow an academic student to come to the United States for academic purposes for a period of no more than 1 year. And they must be enrolled in an institute that is approved by the United States for this purpose. So that sounds kind of familiar, but kind of different. We talk a lot about Rotary, and we're very familiar with J1 students here in Lake George. So this next slide does give a little information to help determine the differences and similarities between these different programs. So as we were saying, we have been focused specifically on F1 visa opportunities. That program its purpose is specific to academics. There is a tuition that the student pays, and there is funding to support host families. There is also an application process that is done directly to the district. So when we think then about J1 visas, that program is based more culturally. So we have students that are coming to the area and they will work during the summer for a cultural experience and not necessarily with the academic purpose. There is no tuition paid and there is no host family involvement and funding for host families. So the next column we have here is Rotary. And what we've learned through this process is that students who come through Rotary are actually using a J1 visa. So it is still a J1 visa. There is an added educational component because they are coming and participating in the school when they're coming to Lake George. There is no tuition that is paid to the district. It is a scholarship through the Rotary program, and there's no funding support for host families in that. And that application process for students to be selected is through Rotary, not through the school district. And then there is also something called an M1 visa, which is vocationally based and wouldn't have any connection to what we're exploring here today. So I'd like to introduce you to the team now. Since this discussion last year, a group came together to start to explore the opportunities for Lake George. And that team included Fran Kokoza, Jen Cornell, Steve Preuss, and Emily Cooper. And as a team, we have spent months now really exploring existing programs, exploring just the program in general and the requirements. We're fortunate enough that Newcomb and Queensbury school districts have fully functioning programs right now where they have F1 students coming to their districts. So we were able to take a visit to both districts. We were able to speak with their leadership teams and teacher leaders and students. So we learned a lot about how their programs function, their structures, their processes for the paperwork and recording systems, their interview process with students and host family recruiting. And we also learned a lot just from the students' perspectives and hearing about their experiences. Both districts were very supportive, very helpful. They've shared numerous resources with us. And so from all of those, we came together as a team to really think about how do we take all of that to determine what it looks like here at Lake George. And I think when we went on those visitations, we didn't realize how much flexibility we'd have in defining that. But as we visited both schools, while they're both meeting all the regulations and necessities of the program, they actually have different feels. And that was nice to see, because we found ourselves on the van ride kind of saying like, ooh, we really liked this part here and we liked this part here. So since those visits, which were last spring, we've had several meetings to really think about what that could look like for Lake George. And the team really did some nice thinking about this. So before we just jumped in and said, oh, we need this, we need this, we need this, they started with why. And why would we do F1? And this first component really talks about who benefits, not just what are the benefits, but who. And as they looked through those lenses, they really realized that it's the Lake George community as a whole that would benefit, as we would be enhancing our culture and climate of the whole school community through very specific benefits for our K-12 student body, for the F1 students and their families, for the host families, and for the K-12 faculty and staff. There really would be specific benefits for each of those different groups of people in our community, with an overall benefit for the whole community. Then the team moved into what are some of those specific benefits. The list was long. I did not include the entire list. I just have a few highlighted here about impacts and enrichment to our co-curricular activities, or opportunities for sharing and growing with interests and hobbies, broadening our exposure to the global perspectives, and really, most importantly, it's going to help us fulfill the district's mission, vision, and values. If you look back at our mission, our vision in particular, and our values, there are very specific connections that we can broaden and build upon through this program if we bring it here to the district. This last slide talks about the launch process. It's sort of a timeline here. It is much more detailed than what you see, but this really highlights the main parts. So the first step is applying to the Student Exchange and Visitor Program, which is a component of Homeland Security. And that is how we will be allowed. We will be able to receive F1 students. After the application, which we submitted 3 weeks ago, I believe, we very quickly received an email to schedule a site visit. So that site visitation actually occurred yesterday. I keep having to remember it's Tuesday. So we did have our site visit. So we are on the path to being approved. While we're waiting, because this approval could take 6 to 12 months, while we're waiting, we're hoping to be able to move forward to be ready to launch once we can. So some of the next steps would include working with an agency. So both schools that we visited talked about how there are agencies that help navigate this process. They help the schools and the students match and really find the right fit for both. So part of that process with the agency would really be defining the student profile that fits right for Lake George. And then that is something that would continue to be a part of the process as we get later down the road. That profile would guide our interviewing that we do of the students and their families, and that application that they would be completing specific to Lake George. Another step that we would like to do is have a coordinator position. Again, both schools had staff who took on the roles and responsibilities to facilitate this program. Some of that facilitation is logistics, paperwork, the interviews, recruiting host families, communication with the community, and then a really significant part would be the support of the students while they're here, in the sense of them having a place when they're in the building that they can go to and connect and feel safe and connected and supported. As I said, the other step would be sharing with our school community, because it is beyond just the walls of the school. And in addition to informing and inviting participation from the whole school community, a big part of this will also be finding families that would like to participate at an elevated level and being a host family. We are hoping within 6 to 12 months to have that approval from SEVP, and then it would be working with that agency to complete the interviews and have students join us. We're thinking that we would like to start small and make sure that we build this in a meaningful way. So we would anticipate 2 students the first time around, and it's also dependent on students choosing us as well. So that's something that is reciprocal in both ways. So that is where we are at this point. Do you have any questions for the team?
This is really exciting. Thank you so much for this. Does anybody have any questions or?
Megan, what's a typical number of students that would, once a program was flourishing, how many students might you expect to have in a year?
So again, it depends both on what we define as the right fit for Lake George and how students feel about coming to Lake George. We noticed Newcomb is a small district, and I believe when we were there were probably around 8 students, or was it more? 8. And Queensbury had about the same amount. A little bit fewer, but we'll have, I think, are going to have a larger number coming in this year, or did this year. And that was actually one of the conversations that we talked a lot about, as far as what is that right number. And I don't know if we would have that answer now, because we don't know what would be involved. But one thing we did talk a lot about is the host family, and how do we ensure that this program is sustainable year after year, and that might mean keeping our numbers small so that we can continue to have host families year after year after year, and not kind of use them up, because that was something that I think Newcomb has experienced over the years.
So Mary Ann, with that one thought, the beauty of this program is that we can expand it or contract it based on our district. And what Newcomb has experienced is a saturation with host families. So they've had to make alternative accommodations for the number of students that they have. The other thing, the beauty of bringing this program to our district is, and Donna and Rosemary and Steve know, our district has had a long history of hosting international students. We're going back to Sherman Parker's time, when Rotary, our local Rotary, had a fairly robust exchange student program. This codifies for our district a process that keeps that a sustainable, consistent presence in our building year after year after year. Whereas right now, and this is not a judgmental statement, it's been a hodgepodge of requests, students who obtain a host family through Rotary or through other exchange programs. And there could be a year where we have 1 student, there could be a year where we have 2 students, or there could be several years where we have no students. And in fact, the past couple of years, along with COVID, we have not had any exchange or international students here. What this does is this puts in place a system to ensure that we continually have that program and that presence in our district.
And just to add on to that, it creates that system and program without taking away the opportunity for students to come through Rotary. So it's not an either or.
I guess having had the experience through the Rotary Club, being on both sides, as a student as a Rotary, Rotarian. It's definitely always been finding host families that has been the limitation, the
Absolutely.
limiting factor. So I didn't know when we first decided, being new on the board, to pursue this program, was there any kind of a community survey to see if there were families who would be interested? Do we have any idea of the availability of families to host these kids? Because that's, yeah.
Yeah, we don't at this point. And what is going down this path, we're not obligated at any point. So we could go through the application process and be approved, and that doesn't mean we have to immediately receive students. So part of getting this process started is because it's such a long wait time. And so again, with this launch process, the thought is that our next step is connecting with the agency, because they will provide some guidance and support on some different processes, procedures, handbooks, items like that, but also to start our communication with the community. And so that idea of a survey is great.
That's a really good point, Donna. And I just wanted to share too, that was the issue of the host families was a key point on both of our visits, where they said really the program is built upon the ability to provide hosts for the students that come in. And so as a committee, when we were planning, we were kind of aware of that. And so we've discussed some ideas to what I would call, build capacity
Okay.
to welcome families into that hosting community. So even though the students would be high school level students, we have plans to really provide K-12 exposure to, perhaps create excitement about, boy, when I get to the high school, I can't wait till I can host, a student that I met as an elementary student or along those lines. So a lot of the capacity we can have in terms of the number of students is going to be dependent on the host families that we can welcome into the
I'm all
program.
for it, I've hosted too. So if you need somebody who's had experience hosting international students to help
Great.
promote, I'd be happy to be part of that process. 'Cause it sounds like a great program. I just hope, it takes a lot of community buy-in to make it
Yeah.
work.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And that's also another component of having that coordinator position, that they're providing support for the host families and also kind of connection amongst the host families too, of building that community there.
And the two schools, are they having one family for an entire year? Like, so a
Yes.
student will have one?
Yes. Yep. And they both suggested having sort of like respite opportunities, so that having, again, that sort of community of people that could support. So if you want to have a break, if you need to go somewhere, or if you need to take care of things, that, there'd be another family that students could stay with for a period of time. But yeah, it's sort of also planning for if things don't match well and all of that. Yeah.
Great. Looking forward to it. I hope it works.
Yeah.
Trish, you still on there? Do you have anything? Still with?
Yeah, I have one question. With the coordinator position, has there been analysis done of how many students tuition would cover that cost? That would be I would imagine it's an additional cost to the district when we launch.
Yes. So I might ask Lynn to chime in a little bit, but we have done an analysis of the costs beyond just for the coordinator, but also for any other services that would be needed, any equipment, cost to the district for that.
And the tuition was so that tuition will cover all the additional costs to the district. So it will be a break even.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you so much, Megan, for the presentation, and thank you to the team.
Yeah.
Really for all of your work you've already done and for the future work for a really important program. Thank you. Next up, we have the elementary update with Mr. Jim Conway.
All right, so Thanksgiving, couple weeks. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Looking forward to that, one of my favorite holidays. I just want to recognize a couple of celebrations that we had recently, or events that have happened. One was our own election day, which Mr. Luthringer participated in. We have kids. Mrs. Crossman organizes this, where we have about 30 pumpkins, maybe a little bit more this year, that are painted, and then there's voting based on the top pumpkins, which are connected to children's stories and characters and stories. And the results were announced today, and there was a lot of excitement in the building. So I wanted to mention that and thank Mrs. Crossman for organizing that. Thank you for participating. I can get you the results. I can get you the results. It's on, Megan says it's on Facebook, so maybe your favorites did come out as some of the top winners. If you'd like to enter next year, we invite you. You're the superintendent, you can enter. I also wanted to just recognize our music department, really in both buildings, for the all-county chorus event that took place this past weekend. I am very proud of the work that Mariah Nissen is doing. She's in her first year at the elementary school. We had 15 elementary students that participated. I know that John Alecci was the conductor for the secondary level, the senior high chorus. So really good representation from our music department. I'm going to continue talking to you about the work that our Student Lighthouse team is doing. We've had a couple of meetings already this year. I may have shared there were over 65 kids that applied. We have about 32 members on the actual Lighthouse team, and they're doing some brainstorming. So get ready for some big things to be going on in the district. And Mr. Luthringer heard some of that meeting, so he's well aware of the ideas and brainstorming from these kids in 4th through 6th grade. I also want to recognize that last night was our second PTSO meeting. I think Mary Ann, Katie, and Rosemary also were able to be there again, and John as well. So thank you for being there to support that group. One of the things you'll notice is we had a really good turnout. There's a new slate of officers that are there, so there's excitement, and thanks to the work that Jen O'Leary and Summer Steves are doing, good things are happening coming out of the last few years, where it was like a lot of scrambling to maintain programs and maintain their funding. But good things are going on there, so we're excited about that. Report cards are going to be going home next week on Monday, and that leads into our student-led parent conferences, which happen on those half days. And that's a really important part of our leadership program, really, where kids are able to share with their parents what they're learning about in school, the goals that they're setting for themselves, and how they're reaching those goals. And, we hope that as they progress from kindergarten through 6th grade, their understanding of goal setting and what they're doing to get there increases each year. And my final note, I just want to share that we finished our safety drills today with our second lockdown drill. Our students did a great job as always. And I do want to point out in those drills that Fran and I are both very thankful for the roles that our school resource officers play in safety in both buildings. They are a critical element in ensuring that we're maintaining the highest level of safety for the students in the district. So I thank you for continuing to support those positions. That's all I've got.
I just want to say that the student-led conferences it's an incredible thing that you are doing in the elementary school. I think it shows when you've been doing it for a while, and it shows when the students come to the high school that they're good leaders and they can speak for themselves, and it's a great concept. So thank you.
Thanks, Rosemary.
Thank you. Next, we have the secondary update with Mr. Fran Kokoza.
That's an inside joke. However, though, it is observation season, and I am working diligently to get into a lot of classrooms and observing our teachers, as is Mr. Luthringer, Mrs. Coker, and Mr. Conway. So I'm pleased to give a fall sports wrap-up. Our teams, our athletic teams for the fall sports have done an incredible job representing Lake George High School. I'll go through it fairly quickly, but here's some noteworthy accomplishment of our student athlete teams. Volleyball, is going to state regionals this Saturday at 1 o'clock in Beekmantown against Lake Placid. So that's a regional final this Saturday for volleyball. Football is going to the Section 2 final. They also call it the Super Bowl of Section 2. That's this Friday at 7 o'clock in Lansingburg. We are playing Schuylerville. Boys cross country is going to states. Cross country made it to states, qualified for states at Vernon, Verona, Sherrill in Vernon, Verona, New York. I mutilated that, right, John? I got it. Third time. No, it's actually a 3-name district, right? It's a consolidated VVS. Sticking with that. That is Saturday morning in Verona, New York. So we have 3 teams in their postseason right now, which is incredible. Additionally, girls cross country placed second in the Adirondack League. Boys soccer was second place in the Western Division of the Adirondack League and a sectional qualifier. Girls soccer won the Adirondack League regular season and also was a sectional semifinalist. And not to leave anyone out, golf was the runner-up on division for the league, and Zach Bruno was the individual tournament champ and league MVP and sectional qualifier. So our fall sports have done and continue to do very well. And with all of that that I just said, winter sports start on Monday. Additionally, note your calendars for December 9th and December 10th. That is our high school musical. December 9th and December 10th, there's 2 showings at 7 o'clock. It is the Addams Family. So we're excited about our musical. The end of the first quarter, it is Thursday. Are your grades in, Janine? All right. And report cards like the elementary school for the high school go out next week. And that's the high school update. Monday. We do. It's on the agenda tonight. We actually have 2. Yes.
Thank
That
you.
really is incredible for this small size school that we are and the declining enrollment. And, not only I guess I should speak for myself. I'm very proud of the athletes, but the musicians, the business department, science department, the math, like we produce some incredible things and students. And it's something we're very proud of.
Exciting. Thank you. Next, we have the superintendent's report with Mr. John Luthringer.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Katie. I couldn't help but piggyback a little bit on what Mr. Koza mentioned with athletics, because it really has been truly remarkable for me as a new superintendent to bear witness to the great programming we have here. And I joked with Athletic Director Manny on Saturday as we were passing each other up and down the 87 corridor heading to the events. It really was wonderful to witness. So we had a great Queensbury. I saw Mario from behind there. We were on the other side, but Queensbury hosted the sectional cross country event, which they did a wonderful job. It was impressive to see our students finish where they did and then qualify for the states. And then, of course, our football program, the Wolverines have just really exceeded all expectations. And again, it's wonderful to see these communities coming together at these events to witness our football program doing such a wonderful job. And we look forward to Lansingburg, although I was informed that we might have 2 inches of rain Friday. So we'll have to see how that goes, if we're all being rain slickers or not. But really looking forward to that. And then, of course, it was great to see volleyball in Saratoga win as well. So sectional championship. So a lot to be proud of. There really is, as Rosemary said, with our programming. As we enter the holiday season, as you mentioned, also music. I had the pleasure of attending the junior senior high school concert last night. It was a wonderful performance. It was great to see the jazz band and of course the chorus and the regular band as well. And I was just so, you get so touched by the students and just the emotion that comes with seeing a musical performance. And I commented to Mr. Alecci because one of the songs was actually written and arranged by students. And I always find that to be just so amazing because that's, you know, not a skill I have, and it's just, you see what these kids can come up with when they're given some space and time and creativity to actually develop music that then is performed by the rest of the group. So really just a great performance last night. I also just want to briefly mention just a thanks to Megan and her work with the F1 visa program. It is quite exciting. We did have our site visit. It went very well. And it was great. So a representative from Homeland Security actually came and we answered a lot of questions, and we think we did quite well. And again, also to the committee that's really been charged with leading that. Tonight on the board agenda, as I've talked about, we really are at a point where we do need an international coordinator to help facilitate the next series of steps. And as Lynn mentioned also, it is a self-funding program once we start having students here with the tuition that we get to set. So it benefits a variety of things, as you heard tonight. So we're really excited to start seeing that move forward. After tonight, you know, we'll be looking forward to having our international coordinator step in and really help assist us with that. On Thursday, just as a point of reference here, we do have our K-12 early dismissal drill. It's required. It's make sure we can, in the event of evacuation, we can leave early. So it is a practice. All districts do it. Most do it on Thursday, actually. But one thing we will be testing is we had a meeting. It's hard to believe with the weather we've been having, but preparing for the event of a snow closure, school closure. So we were working through all of that and responsibilities and different ways that we're going to communicate that. And one of the ways we're going to communicate that is through Parent Square. So we'll be texting on Thursday to reminder about the go home early drill, as it's called, but also notifying our parents that that's how we will be communicating, in addition to website and normal methods, but they will be getting a text notification in the event of a school closure or delay. It is, you never know. So we could be experiencing some snow here at some point soon. The last piece here is I just want to give a really brief presentation, a very quick update on our transportation facility project that we've got upcoming. So as someone mentioned, we had the pleasure of attending the PTSO meeting last night, and we presented on the transportation facility project, a lengthier presentation. So just a reminder for the Board of Education here that we've been talking about for a number of months now, the need for looking at this transportation facility. We do have a vote going on December 6th, which we'll talk about. But just as a reminder for everyone, this is the conceptual site plan. This slide hasn't changed. You've seen this before. But again, just to orientate ourselves, this is what we're talking about, and that's what's on the ballot on December 6th. That piece right there comes off 9L, and you can see up by the track is where the new facility would be located, pending the outcome of the vote. This is an slightly updated drawing here. As you can see on the left-hand side, we've got our storage facility for the covered bus storage for our buses. On the right-hand side, we have our wash and maintenance bays. So again, 2 fully functioning work bays, which we don't have right now. We have 1 functional work bay. We really need 2, and then the third one would be a wash bay as well. This also acts as storage for our vehicles as well, so we can park 2 buses in there as well as some minivans if needed. And then in the interior, you can see we've gone back and taken a look at this. Again, this is all conceptual. Once the vote is approved, we would have a much longer full design process. But essentially, it encompasses everything that we need. It has a secure vestibule for safety. It has an office space for our transportation supervisor to do his work. Also, it has a training and break room right as you walk up to the north. It also has complete adequate storage, which we do not have in the current facility, for our batteries, our tires, all sorts of different parts. It's a mezzanine, so it's up and down. And then in addition to that, it has 2 restrooms that will be open to the public for athletic events. So that's an important piece there. You can see those doors that swing out. So the whole facility can be locked, but those can be open and accessible for athletic events. We also have added an additional single occupancy bathroom inside as well, plus locker facilities for our mechanics to wash up and clean up from the day. And also there's a small maintenance closet as well for storing some additional cleaning material. So this meets all the needs that of our facility. Much of this we do not have now, as we've talked about many times. Just a reminder here, part of the proposal here is to plan for the electric vehicle mandate. As we've said before, New York State, we have to begin purchasing electric vehicle buses by 2027 with a total fleet conversion by 2035. If you have gone and voted today, you've noticed that on the ballot, there's an Environmental Bond Act for $4.2 billion. It was called Clean Water something. But what it does, some of this money, $1 billion, will be utilized for schools and for electric vehicles. So again, the voters are going to determine that today, so we should know if that passes soon. We did visit Bethlehem Central School District. They are one of the only schools in the North Country that has received electric buses. They've received 5 of them. And it was a wonderful visit. We learned a lot. So Lynn, Andy Raymond, and I went down there, and Andy got to drive a bus. We rode on the bus. It was extremely quiet, and it actually exceeded Andy's expectations. So that was huge. He really enjoyed riding in it and driving it. The picture to the right is the charging unit they've attached theirs to the walls of their facilities, but there's going to be a lot of options for that as we proceed forward with the new facility and how we best design where those charging stations go. But the bus looks and feels almost identical to our normal school buses, except it's much more quiet. So it's going to be a better experience for our drivers and our students as well. And they're finding that that's happening down in Bethlehem. Just last couple slides here as a reminder, financial information, the facility's cost is $13.5 million. It's not expected to increase local tax levy due to all the great work from Lynn Durway and our fiscal advisors. We're utilizing the capital reserve that the voters approved last year. We're utilizing some capital funds. It will be bonded over 30 years. We get reimbursed at a 10% state building aid. And the biggest, most important thing is keeping that debt level current to what we have at this point. So all of those things combined works in the favor of ensuring that it doesn't raise the local tax levy. As a reminder for informing our community, we've done a tremendous amount of work to get the word out, but there's still work to be done over this last month here as we lead up to the vote. Our website has been fully updated. It includes all of the presentations. It also has a video on there that we did that we'll be doing tomorrow in our community presentation. So there's about a 2-minute video showcasing the facility, talking about the new facility. It has 2 great actors, Andy Raymond and Brian Houlihan, in our transportation department. So they did a great job. We've done mailings. It's part of our fall newsletter that have been hitting mailboxes, I've been told today. So if you haven't received it, over the next day or 2, you should receive that. It's a big focal point of the fall newsletter. We presented to the PTSO last night, which had a great turnout. And also tomorrow night, we have our community presentation. So tomorrow at 7 p.m., myself, Lynn, our stakeholder group will be present. So we'll have members of our architectural firm, some of our external and internal stakeholders will be present as well. And we'll have a more thorough presentation to share with the community, to include a couple different videos that really kind of showcase the need for a new facility. And as mentioned, it will go out to the voters on December 6th. And as a reminder, so 12 to 7 p.m. is the vote. It's at Lake George Elementary School. So we encourage everyone to exercise their right to vote and come out. And that is the details for the project. Yes, tomorrow night, the community presentation is at the elementary school in the Little Theater. The facility proposal is on that site, so it makes sense for us to be down there to talk about it. And it's a great spot for it. So thank you so much. That's all I have.
Thank you. Next up, Trish, did you have something? Or was that just? Okay. Next up, we have Mario Fasullo as the Audit and Finance Chair to give the committee report.
Thanks, Katie. We reviewed the Treasurer's report in September. We did review the tax collections. There was a pilot program by the Boats by George, so they gave a check directly to the school for about $14,000. That is an item that's going to be on the consent agenda later. Interest, I mean, we're seeing what the Fed did with the interest rate, which helps our investments. And so we're seeing that climb a little bit. It was over $13,000. So we're close to 3% right now. The claims auditor's report is also going to be on the consent agenda. There was nothing really noteworthy there. We reviewed the profit and loss report for the food service, and it was interesting to learn a little bit more about that in terms of how it gets funded and where it lands at the end of the year. It is subsidized by $30,000 from the federal funds, which provide the free breakfast and lunch to all the students. It was at a loss of about almost $8,000 with breakfast and lunch, but with the a la carte sales, which is anything that is non-regular menu items, overall, there was a profit of $36,000 for the year. And one of the things that I learned about, which I don't think about, I think about the food service operations for the students. I don't think about it, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I don't think about it for the administrators or the teachers. Some of the feedback we got was that they were very happy with it. And there's different avenues we could go down, but there was nothing positive about any of the other avenues. So a lot of the conversation revolved around just leaving it the way it is. It's working well. The teachers enjoy it, which is a big deal. So that was an interesting conversation. There were two new pilot agreements in our district. One was the Sun Valley Apartments, which is going to have about 39 units, which we know where that's going. And then the Fort William Henry is doing capital improvements to their property, which will also help us. They're doing, I ended up seeing it, I don't know where I saw it. It was social media or the Chronicle, but they had pictures of what they were doing for helping expand their wedding business. But those two are really going to help our tax base, and it'll just overall help with tax reduction in the district. And then next month, we're going to be talking about average hourly wage, minimum wage. It's going to go up in January, so we might have to go into some of our current employees, take a look at their current rates, and do we move them because people that are just starting will be bumping up against what they're making. And so we're going to take a look at that in November. Any questions?
I just have one. Pilot is an acronym for payment in lieu of
tax, sorry.
taxes.
Yep.
So one thing that we've tried to work on over the years is anytime we use an
Yep.
acronym, we
Spell it out.
explain what it
Yep.
is. And it took me multiple repetitions. I'd say, now, can you please tell me again what that pilot is? And so it was great. Lynn gave us a really nice explanation. It helped me understand the piece that you just said, Mario, that these projects, when you think of payment in lieu of taxes, you think that might be a negative thing, but it's
No.
actually a positive
Yes.
thing. It's a win-win all around. And so that was a nice thing to understand after the audit.
So
Finance
technically,
meeting.
I believe we have four right now. We have the Boats by George, these two that the Sun Valley Apartments, the Fort William Henry, and the new one on 149 that we just. Solar. The solar. Thank you very much.
That's not a pilot yet.
Yet. Yep.
Nice.
Which again helps offset any tax increases for us.
Thank you, Mario.
You're welcome.
Wait,
Anybody
can I
else?
just ask one question?
Yeah.
See if I understood this right. So regular breakfast and lunch, we were losing close to 8, but we ended up with a $35,000 profit off of like the kids eating dessert and ice cream and like milk.
Well,
and stuff.
or the salad bar, right?
The
There's
salad, okay.
Yeah, there's other things. Make the sandwich, I want to say sandwich bar also. So anything that's not regular menu
Right.
that the kids want to
That's
get.
amazing.
It is.
I mean, I knew it from my own kids. I would yell at them all the time, but like that's a lot of money to get for
And it- okay.
Right.
That doesn't count in the regular breakfast and lunch. Oh, so staff,
Right.
okay, that makes me feel a little bit.
Again, that's a good sign when the staff is eating there.
Yes.
Okay, now I
Right.
didn't
Right.
understand that the
And
grown-up
that's what
food
I
didn't
learned
count
is
in the
that
original one.
the staff
Okay.
is,
That
so
makes-
invested in it,
that's
and they
great.
consider it a high enough quality where they're not bringing it from home. They're
Excellent.
not going down the street anywhere. They're staying in the building and
So
eating
that's
with
the
the kids. Yeah.
bonus. Yeah, excellent.
When Chef Jeff puts the Warrior Bowl on the menu, people
Oh,
are
yeah,
happy.
people
Yeah,
love
he does
that.
a great job.
That is a testament to Chef
Absolutely.
Jeff.
There, yeah.
Good job,
Right.
Chef Jeff. Good.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mario. Okay, next up, we have Mary Ann McKenzie, who is the chair of the policy committee, with her report.
So we have got 3 policies moving to second read tonight, and they are threats of violence in school, suicide, and advertising in the schools. We discussed those last month. And we have got 3 policies moving to first read this evening, and I'll say a bit about each of them. The first one is 7552, student gender identity. And just to recap a bit, the policy committee had worked to ready that policy to move forward to first read. But upon recommendation from our policy services, Erie One BOCES, we submitted the policy to our attorneys for their review and feedback first. That has occurred, and our attorney did give us a couple of suggestions. One of them was they added some language related to the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, FERPA, issues around privacy and confidentiality. And the attorney also recommended that, I'll back up for a moment. We have originally included, this was called gender identity policy, and it included language relating to students as well as employees. The attorney recommended that we take the language referring to employees and pull it out of the policy and potentially create a separate policy for staff. And the rationale for that is because the laws that apply to employee rights for gender identity and expression go beyond those that apply to students. They are not, the remedies and rights are not the same between employees and students. And employee gender policies must conform to contemporary court case decision. So for those reasons, the policy as it is now is set up just for students, and the policy committee will be looking to explore the possibility of creating a separate policy. Erie One BOCES does not have a sample policy at this time, but we did want to, make note that in the meantime, we do have our 3420 non-discrimination and anti-harassment in the district, and policy 6120 equal employment opportunity. Both policies provide important protections. So that's that for student gender identity. The next policy under first read is 8340, instructional materials and non-public school students. This was came before us by Erie One update, and essentially made the policy more encompassing regarding technology. So the updates were resolved by district level review and policy committee electronic review. And then the other one is policy 1510, regular board meetings and rules, quorum, parliamentary procedure, and public comment. And this policy has been in front of us for quite a while. It went to first read, if you recall, last month. We've pulled it back to first read again because of understanding now the need to choose between the 2 options that were present in the policy for recommendations under extraordinary circumstances. We had 2 options to make the determination to use video conferencing under extraordinary circumstances for the board and its committees or subcommittees, or the other option was to specify that each committee or subcommittee could make its own determination. And the policy committee discussed that at our meeting, which was held last night, and we had a consensus that we wanted to recommend the board adopt option 1, so that in the sake of consistency and alignment of practice between the board and committees. So that's the only change between last month in this month is that option 2 was eliminated because we're recommending the first choice. There were also 3 policies that have been reviewed by electronic review, and no changes were recommended, and they are administrative personnel, the organizational chart policy, and administrative authority policy. And I would just make a note that in 4211, the organizational chart, there were no changes recommended for the policy itself, but the live link that is attached to that policy links to the actual organizational chart, and that has been recently updated. Okay, so we had, like, as I mentioned, we had our most recent policy meeting last night, and we discussed all the things that I just spoke about. And in addition to that, we also picked up on our conversation about 2 new policies that we're looking to develop and adopt. One is on the topic of memorials. And we had a good group conversation about how requests for memorials have been handled historically. And what was revealed really is that there's been a bit of difficulty in navigating requests in the absence of established process. And identified a need for consistency, guidance, criteria, and also clarity on what our past practices have been. So at this point, so we just had a good sort of preliminary discussion, and then we made a plan for this policy topic to be initiate discussions at the district level to get some broad concept of trying to assemble a policy for a memorial, and then we'll bring it back to policy committee for discussion. We also talked about, in line with the F1 visa presentation that we had this evening, along with that program, we have a need to have a policy developed around that. And so we discussed it last night. District professionals brought forward a working policy draft, which we talked about last night. Policy 7134, admission of international students. And I think there were just a couple of points that needed a bit further definition. And so, and maybe a couple questions answered. And so that will be worked on and then brought back to policy committee in the near future. And the last thing we discussed last night was part of our Lake George policy manual review. This was policy 3280, use of school facilities, materials, and equipment. And this policy was actually last updated in our manual in 2013. And I couldn't quite articulate this last night, but remember the actual history of this, but I've got it now. There was an Erie 1 BOCES update in 2017, which we now have had in front of us, which reflects a couple of changes being recommended for this policy. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, one was that it reflected the current law, which gives districts the opportunity to charge for the use of facilities. And the other suggestion that they had is to separate out one part of this policy and make it into a separate policy. And that section that they wanted to pull out had to do with an anti-discrimination language related to patriotic youth groups. And we had a conversation about that. And ultimately, we felt that anything that pertained to use of facilities maybe served the district better by being in one location, maybe made it more user-friendly. Yeah, and so that's the general concept of what we talked about last night. You'll see these policies in first read next month. It'll make more sense. And you'll also have the minutes from our meeting last night in front of you. So this will help you understand that when you do see it. And that's my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Mary Ann.
Okay.
Any questions? Good. Okay, our next item on the agenda is our first public comment period. And this period is for items that are on the agenda. I'll just do a little brief synopsis of how public comment works. The board welcomes district residents, parents, and other interested persons to the meetings. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that the board can better understand and represent the views of our constituents. Please be aware that by law, individual student information or particular personnel issues cannot be discussed at public sessions of the board. Please tell us your name when you come to the microphone. Statements are limited to 3 minutes. The board and district staff take public comment very seriously, and careful notes of questions and concerns will be taken so that they can be addressed as soon as possible. Thank you in advance for helping maintain a safe and respectful decorum for our meeting. So on the first period, we have one person signed up. If you didn't sign the sheet and you would like to make a comment, just please raise your hand after our first speaker. This not signing the sheet doesn't mean that you can't speak. It just helps us organize our public comment period. Okay, so the first person, or the only person signed up for the first period is Linda Clark.
Thank you. Linda Clark. I live in the district. I have several questions regarding 2 items. I don't expect answers tonight, but if you would just consider these questions, I would appreciate it. Regarding the visa program, question 1, will there be issues with language limitations between teachers and students? And if so, how will these issues be resolved and at what cost? Question 2, is the MOA stipend covered by the tuition? And question number 3 is how many students will it take to completely cover this stipend? And last, question number 4, can you elaborate more on the involvement of Homeland Security? The other item I'd like to address is the student gender identity. A couple of questions with that as well. In this policy, it says that it talks about unofficial records and name changes. Who can make changes to the unofficial records? If not parents, will the unofficial changes be shared with parents? Question number 2, okay, so when you talk about parents in here and notifications, it's always as appropriate for parents and guardians. So my question is, who determines when it is appropriate to notify parents? That's my second question. And the last question is there a consideration and a plan to deal with students who feel uncomfortable sharing bathrooms and locker room facilities with a student whose gender identity is not the same as their biological identity? Those are my questions for the policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else who is interested in public comment? Okay, we have a second public comment at the toward the end of the meeting. Our next item on the agenda is school business and the school business consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the school business consent agenda items A through I. In summary, item A is to approve the October 11th regular meeting minutes. Item B is the recommendation. The board approves the November recommendations on Committee on Special Education. Item C is the Audit and Finance Committee met and reviewed the Treasurer's Report and extracurricular activities funds. My recommendation is to approve the Treasurer's Report and extracurricular activities fund. Item D is also at the Audit and Finance Committee, reviewed the Claims Auditor's Report. It is my recommendation the board approve that report. Item E, after going through the standard first and second reads, is my recommendation the board approves the policies put up for approval. Item F is the agreement. Each year, there's an agreement between the town with elementary sanding and salt agreement for the upcoming winter season. So as necessary, they help facilitate the salt in the parking lot. It's my recommendation the board approve that agreement. Item G is the recommendation we have for the November surplus list and authorize the disposal of the items in accordance with the policy and also the best interests of the district. Item H is in order to move forward with the HVAC project at the elementary school. The district was required to seek proposals for the electrical portion of the work involving a new electrical transformer. There was 3 bids received. We verified that the low bidder could complete the project within the scope and schedule. It's my recommendation the board awards the bid for the electric services to Brownell Electric Corporation. And item I is a motion to approve the appointment of Lynn King as the permanent chairperson of the capital project vote and the following inspectors to the roster of the Board of Registration for the capital project vote as presented here.
So moved.
Do we have any questions? Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is faculty staff recognitions, and that first section of that is faculty staff. Oh, it's recognitions. I always get this wrong. Faculty staff recognitions, and the first category is faculty staff resignations.
Yes.
Thank you.
As recommended by the superintendent, be resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby accepts the resignation of Lori Wolf from the position of cleaner and nights in the non-competitive class of the civil service effective October 28th, 2022.
Okay.
Have any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next item is faculty staff appointment consent agenda.
As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby approves the faculty staff appointment consent agenda, items A through D. Item A is to approve the appointment of Kevin Parrott as the Provisional Director of Facilities 2, effective November 21st, 2022, contingent upon passing and being reachable in the civil service exam of Director of Facilities 2. Item B is a motion to appoint Cheryl Fischetti to the position of part-time food service helper. Item C is a motion to amend the 2022-2023 coaches list and the salaries associated with those positions, as well as the volunteer coaches list. And item D is a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between the Lake George Central School District and the Lake George Education Association dated November 8th, 2022.
Any questions? Any discussion?
Some of these codes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I would like to just mention that Kevin is in the audience tonight. So Kevin, welcome aboard. Thank you so much.
Welcome and thank you for being here tonight. Okay. The next item is Board of Education comments discussion. Somewhere I have out here. So the New York State School Board Convention was held at the end of October, and our superintendent, John Luthringer, Tricia Biles, Marion McKenzie, Rosemary Earl, Mario Fasulo, and I were able to attend the conference. It was a great opportunity for all of us, and I think we all felt like we learned a lot. Does anybody have anything they want to share? Any takeaways from the conference? Certainly.
Not being on a board before and not knowing how they really run, what I learned. Donna, remember that law book they gave us when we first started? That is your friend. So what I've learned is every school has its issues. We are in great shape in many different aspects. And we went to a seminar about board meetings and the public. And I think we do a lot of things really, really well in that aspect. And that I was able to at least walk away learning that great, we're in great shape there. Let's just keep going with that. And there were other things that I learned, but that was a huge takeaway for me. I felt great knowing that, okay, we're on the right track with a lot of things of the way we, interact with the public and the way we interact ourselves. And that law book, I heard some horror stories. That law book is the way to go. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad I went.
I'm glad you went too. Thank you. Anybody else have?
I attended a few workshops. All of them I felt were valuable. It was a great conference. I was particularly interested in Marlee Matlin. She was our guest speaker, I guess you could say. She's a successful actress, winning an Academy Award for Best Actress in The Children of a Lesser God. Marlee is profoundly deaf, and this was discovered as a young child. She credited her parents for rejecting experts who wanted her to attend a small special school that when they discovered her deafness was at 18 months old. She said she enjoyed a normal childhood thanks to her parents' confidence that she could thrive at home and mainstream in her local public school. She had a dream of becoming an actress, and when she was 9 years old, participated in The Wizard of Oz, staged by the Children's Theater for the Deaf. And then at that point, she was introduced to Henry Winkler. We all know who he is, I think. And with his friendship, support, and advocacy, she became a famous actress. And I thought that was particularly inspiring. And it made me think, I had mentioned to John, it made me think of a student of ours who graduated valedictorian class in 1998. He was legally blind and deaf. In my 32 years working with young people, he was the most inspiring. He was motivated to be successful personally and academically. He was infatuated with science, especially chemistry, eventually earning a PhD in organic chemistry from SUNY Albany. And I think my takeaway was that we can all make a difference in young people's lives. Advocacy for young people can and should be made by our entire community, our board members, our administrators, support staff, parents, community members, teachers, coaches, and the list goes on. And one quote Marlee had made that really stood out to me was that we all have challenges in life of one kind or another, and I'm sure you will agree that we can achieve much more if we focus on our abilities rather than indulge ourselves in our perceived disabilities. So I thought that was really good. I felt really good about what we do here at Lake George for our kids, and thinking about this, at least this one student. I know there's many more, but this one student that particularly impressed me. So it was a great conference. I appreciated being with everyone, and I learned quite a bit. So thank you for listening.
Rosemary. Okay, Mary Ann.
So I got so much out of this conference also, and I feel this, I love what you just said, Rosemary. I take the annual business meeting as sort of part of the convention, even though it didn't occur while we were in Syracuse. It occurred virtually the week before or earlier that week. And I, as the delegate for that meeting, I just wanted to comment, I love that experience. It's really a privilege to be a part of that meeting because, I mean, as lengthy as the meeting runs, because there's so many resolutions to get through, it is just so cool to witness this exercise in democracy, and just there's like 300 delegates in the room, and people are very vocal and expressing a really wide array of diverse perspectives and thoughts. And the engagement is just so, it's so meaningful and it's so respectful, and it's just such a great model. And I just love being a part of it and having the opportunity to vote. And I think everybody received the results of the resolution votes there. But anyway, it's a great experience. At the convention itself, I attended the pre-convention law seminar, which I also really love that session. I attended it a couple of years ago, and the topics are just like topics of our day as they relate to the law. And it's just like a really useful educational session for providing foundational knowledge and helping me feel more competent to be conversant in issues that come before us, that are around us. I also attended a policy board doc session where I just learned like just some really great little practical things about features of board docs and how to manage information around and archive information around policy. And I learned a lot there. And I also attended a session about collective board responsibilities that it was educational and it was also really interactive. So I had people had the opportunities to just ask good questions and get really good practical best practice answers. And so I find that very, very useful. So anyway, it was extremely fulfilling convention experience for me.
Thank you, Mary Ann, and thank you very much for being our delegate. We're glad to have you as our representative. Trish, I see your hand up.
Thanks. Yes. I think the session for me that stood out most was the one on election law. And I got some very good information there. It really reinforced how sound our practices have been. And I learned more things. And just like the entire conference, there's always something new to learn and ways to fine tune what we already do. One of the topics that came up in that election law was the differences between electioneering, advocacy, and information, and the nuances between those during an election or a campaign leading up to the vote. And I'll look forward to having more conversations about those and how we go forward to sharpen up our own practices. And like Mario, I'm always amazed at how much we learn, and having the longer view of how much this board has leaned in to ask questions and to continuously learn. And compared to some of the questions and some of the things that have come up in the sessions that I see from other boards, just very proud and very impressed with this board and our level of professionalism in constantly learning and constantly improving. So thank you all. It was a great privilege.
Thank you, Trish. Mario made reference to the workshop that I had a takeaway that I wanted to share, which was running effective board meetings. And I had a similar feeling. I was like, wow, we're on the right track. We're doing a lot of things well. And as a board, we always strive to be on the trajectory of continual improvement. So there was one takeaway. It was a tool that they gave us a link to, the meeting observation sheet. And I really like that. It is, we can self-assess our meetings periodically, and it's got a rubric with, I think it's 20 different criteria, and it's in alignment with, when we look at it, we can see, how are we doing with the suggested criteria, and it can be used as a guiding document for a new board member and for seasoned board members, because there's little tips on it that help you really understand some of the little nuances of running an effective board meeting. And I thought it might be a nice thing to add to our the new member reference guide, which that new member reference guide is a great guide for members who've been on the board for a while too. So anyway, that was a great little tool that I thought we could consider maybe using, because the board self-assessment that we do using SuperEval is something we've done for the last several years, and it's been really helpful in terms of, what Trish was talking about. We're always trying to grow and learn and do things better. And this is just a little specific thing that we could do as an interim in terms of guidance for our board meetings and make little tweaks that to make us better. So, does anybody else have any other takeaways, topics, things from the New York State School Board Convention? Pardon? Oh. You're welcome. Yeah.
I always learn something from every conference that we get to go to, but it was a pleasure to spend time with the members that were able to attend and get to know each other a little bit more, but also, I attended some great sessions, a couple on capital projects, which is important. We've got we have one potentially in the works in regards to energy savings. So there's some discussions that we're having there, in addition to the ones that we attended together. So it was a great conference. It always has many great sessions, and also obviously getting to see Dr. Horning was also nice too, who facilitated the retreat with Super Eval. So just a lot of positives overall. And again, it was just a real pleasure to be with everybody.
That's a good point, Joan. Making connections, with meeting people in person that maybe we've met virtually. Dr. Horning had done our great workshop on goal setting and self-evaluation, superintendent evaluation. So we got to meet him in person, and also in sessions and in mingling around, you meet board members from all over the state, and that's a really powerful piece because you learn from each other. So.
We also had 2 electric buses
Oh, yeah.
that we asked questions and examined, I guess. It was good.
Sarah, thank you so much for organizing the stay and all that. I
Yes.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you. Thank you. That it for the conference? Okay. And then is there anything else outside of the conference for board discussion, comments? Trish?
I just wanted to bring up again, we're on the topic of conferences. We did look into the budget we have for conferences and the potential for us to be able to present at the national conference. And we did learn that it's within our budget constraints, and just wondering, and I know we shared that the longer proposal with board members, if anybody had any questions or concerns about that at this point.
It's pretty quiet here, Trish.
I guess so. Well, very good. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
Just one last thing. I just wanted to follow up on a couple questions that were asked at the last board meeting. A community member had inquired about, this was with regard to the regular board meetings policy 1510, and those 2 options that we talked about for video conferencing. And just the question was asked, and we didn't pass this, we're not looking at this particular resolution as it is, but the question in general is if a committee doesn't have a quorum, how can they make certain determinations without a quorum? And I think, the answer to that, this gentleman did receive an email response, but in case anybody else wanted to know how that is answered, only certain things require board action, and when there's board action by vote, that requires a quorum of 4 board members. By design, the committees do not have a quorum. There are generally 3 board members on each committee, and they can make determinations within their committees that are not requiring of a board vote. And so I just wanted to make that distinction, that there's never a quorum in our subcommittees structure. And the other question was with regard to Robert's Rule of Orders, which is also referenced in that same policy. And the question was asked, which portions of Robert's Rule of Order do you use? And basically that's a difficult question to answer in its entirety, because the idea of using Robert's Rule of Order is to promote the running of a successful meeting. We use Robert's Rules of Order for voting, issues related to quorum, motions, opportunity to speak, etiquette, and other portions that it would be difficult to create an exhaustive list, and we wouldn't be required to be so detailed in a policy format anyway. So just in general, it's a whole book. It's a whole book, and portions that are pertinent to running a successful meeting are drawn upon. Just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that clarity, Mary Ann. Is there anything else? Okay. We don't have anybody for the second public comment on the list, but oh, okay. 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 Yes, welcome.
Linda Clark again. I have some questions. These questions are in regard to the regular board meeting and rules policy that has gone back to first read, or will be going back to first read. Some things I'd like you to address. First of all, I didn't see anything in here. Will the BOE attendee online fulfill the BOE quorum? That's my first question. Second question, can you explain how allowing a BOE member who is out of town on a job fits the spirit of the law? Now, at the last meeting in October, this issue was brought up, and Ms. Biles had referenced the resolution from August 10th of 2021. So I went back and I read that resolution, and that kind of made sense during COVID, but it doesn't make sense now. So if you read the law, the spirit of the law is this: members of the public body, which is the BOE, shall be physically present at any such meeting unless such member is unable to physically present at any such meeting location due to extraordinary circumstances as set forth in the resolution and written procedures adopted pursuant to paragraphs A and B of this subdivision, including disability, illness, caregiving responsibilities, or any other significant or unexpected factor or event which precludes the member's physical attendance at such meetings. So my question to you is, how is what is happening currently and with this document that you've prepared in the spirit of this law? Thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
I just want to make an important clarification that the use of, just for everybody to recall, the use of extraordinary circumstances video conferencing is a condition that is separate from the resolution that was passed last year, which was regarding video conferencing, not under extraordinary circumstances. Under extraordinary circumstances, the difference is that when somebody is attending remotely, that does not need to be noticed for the public to be able to attend in that location. That piece does not impact a prior resolution that was passed a year ago regarding video conferencing under a different set of circumstances. And so I just want to make that distinction and make sure that that's clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Is there any other public comment? Okay.
Katie,
Yes.
there's a question up on the chat here. Sarah, do you see those?
Okay.
Do,
Yeah, I mean, there's, it, I guess when, when the meetings were all fully remote, we were using the chat as, for questions. I mean, and maybe going forward, we can establish that feature is not for that. If there's, if somebody has asked this evening, we can document those questions and comments, and then we can make note that that feature was for when we're fully remote. And I guess we can, so I think if y'all are in agreement, we can hear what the questions are. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, two of the questions, the person is not online anymore. And let me take a look here. But one is.
It would make sense maybe then tonight to look at the question for the person that's still their questions. I don't find out who they were from to get back to them.
Okay.
Just the.
To the person who's currently attending, you want to read
We
that
could
one?
read,
or-
we could respond to the other questions next month
Yeah.
for whoever's
Right.
listening.
Yeah.
You want to read them for the record?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so the first question was, is the current inflation rage of 8+% going to affect healthcare cost? The second question was, I have questions. Then the third one is, and this person is still online, what is the extraordinary circumstance that allows a board member to be remote every month?
Okay. And I think Mary Ann addressed some of that piece there. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so the next item is a proposed executive session. And do I read that? Or do you read that, John? I forget. For executive session, do I read that? Okay. As recommended by the superintendent, be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Lake George Central School District hereby proposes entering into an executive session for the purpose of discussions regarding the employment history of particular employees and of the district and pending litigation.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
I've got a question.
Okay.
Do we add to that the, oh, never mind, we're covered.
And we do not expect to come back into open session after the executive session. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you.